Hello, this is Brother Dr. Lydell Lutzum, a member of the Kappa Upsilon Lambda chapter of the Mid-Hudson Valley, New York, and a Spring 89 initiate into the Zeta Eta chapter. Also a member of the Surgeon General's Committee on Health Disparities, and the founder of the Vanbird Health Equity Project. Today I would like to give you a brief introduction onto what health disparities are. So, what are health disparities? Well, one of the things you have to remember about health disparities is that they are not natural. They're not just a course of living life. They are preventable. They're preventable in the fact that they cause a burden of disease and violence to socially disadvantaged people. They're also preventable in the fact that they give adverse outcomes and adverse experiences to only specific populations. As this slide here shows, one of the things we have to bear in mind with health disparities is that they're ubiquitous in our society. But more importantly, they change the way people experience their life. And unfortunately, health disparities then not only change the way people experience their lives, but they also change the level of health, the level of life expectancy, the amount of money they pay on healthcare, and their overall health state. As up top it shows, they're mainly driven by social and economic inequities. So today I'm going to give a few examples of health disparities. I'll start with the state of Connecticut. Although it would be easier to start maybe in the South, I chose a northern state because one of the things is, overall, Connecticut is one of the healthiest and wealthiest states we have in the country. But as you'll see, despite being second in per capita household income, sixth in median overall house income, and the fifth lowest in poverty rate, compared to their white counterparts, Black and Hispanic Connecticut residents are more likely to live shorter lives and in poor health. On an average, 3 to 4 years shorter for Black Connecticut residents. Another example of health disparity comes out of the National Academy of Science and Engineering report, where they found that Native Americans and Alaskan Natives had an infant mortality rate that was 60% greater than their white counterparts. Moreover, in 2010, that African Americans were 30% more likely to die from heart disease. That African American men, we were two times more likely to die from a stroke. Black women are 3 times more likely to die during pregnancy than white women. And as I go back to the Connecticut example, I want to uplift Serena Williams, who came dangerously close to being part of those 3 times statistic when she suffered a blood clot during her pregnancy. African Americans as a whole, we are 2 more times likely than white Americans to die from cancer and heart disease. The underlying footnote of this statistic is troubling in the sense that African Americans and white Americans share the same statistics in terms of heart disease and cancer are the top 2 causes of death for both white and Black Americans. So you can't just say that, well, this is something that only affects Black people and that might be the reason why there's less resources or better or worse outcomes. These are 2 diseases that affect Black and white people both horribly, but yet still Black people are 2 times more likely to die from these disease entities than their white counterparts. To understand health disparity, you have to also understand health equity. They go hand in hand. Disparities are preventable. Health equity is attainable. I'll say that again. Disparities are preventable and health equity is attainable. A better way to look at it, disparities go into what is wrong, and health equity gives us the guidelines and goals to what should be happening. These definitions out there, health equity is when everyone has the opportunity to be as healthy as possible. The CDC's definition, which is very American in the sense that liberty for all, but we know that's not the experience. So I have put below the World Health Organization's definition of equity. It is the absence, not just the opportunity, but the absence of avoidable or remediable differences among groups of people. So all of those can live their best life. At the core of health equity and disparities is the concept of fairness and justice in the way people are treated. So I'm very happy that Alpha Phi Alpha has chosen to take a lead in educating ourselves and our community about what is health disparities and health equity, because it is a core battle of social justice and social fairness. Equity is defined as the financial value of your property or your shares of ownership. But also, the equity is attainable in the sense of who gets to make the options and access. Once again, as I said, it's the fairness and justice in the way people are treated. So when I bring up health equity, I always want people to know we live in this time where so much is discussed about the choices people make, the decisions people make, but very little attention is given to the option. And that's also at the core of health equity. We want to talk about choices, but we also have to talk about choices in the context of what are the options people are being faced with, what are the opportunities people are being given. This slide here that talks about the determinants of health are income and employment. At the end of the day, we really don't tend to have that much say in that. That's why Alpha Phi Alpha, we pride ourselves in our go to high school, go to college, because the core of that, we understand that the more education you have, the more choice you may have in determining where you are employed and how much money you can attain. But we unfortunately have to contend with the fact that many of us don't have choice in where we go to school as children. We don't have choice in the health services that are available to us. We absolutely do not have a choice in the genetics that are passed down to us from our parents. So as much as we want to highlight the choices people are making in their health, we have to look at this slide in general and understand that people are often living their lives in areas that they don't have much control over. And so as a community, as a nation, we have to fight for fairness and justice in terms of the options that are available to our citizens. And that's where disparities are important to understand, because at the core, disparities are a barrier to our health. They are barriers to the way we live. They're barriers to our life. For example, in 2015, they did a report in St. Louis, and they found that there was an 18-year difference in lifespan between blacks and whites who were only living a few miles apart from each other, less than 12 miles apart from each other to be exact. The conditions and the environments where people are born, where we live, learn, work, and play, worship, and age, they affect a wide range of our health, our functioning, our quality of life, and the outcomes and risks we face. Further, at the Van Bird Health Equity Project, we ourselves did a review, and we went through 36 peer-reviewed articles that were published over 18 months. The articles covered all kinds of healthcare topics, from autopsy, congenital heart disease, orthopedic surgery, obesity, and we found that disparities existed within healthcare management and administration, disparities existed in healthcare treatment, access, and of course, outcome. Some of the articles that I'll highlight for you: article on endometrial cancer, 70% of blacks versus 70% of white women receive care according to mandated guidelines. This is important not only in the sense that guidelines weren't always followed, but even more so that this 5% difference had a significant, statistically significant outcome and effect in terms of the outcome, lifespan, and health that the women experienced in this study. Another thing with disparities, 6 of the 20th largest healthcare systems in the country reviewed, they had less than 25% minority leadership. Underline this fact that this is minority leadership, so this includes women, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Latino Americans, Asian Americans. Less than 25% represented minority leadership in the 20 largest healthcare systems. They did another study on BMI and blacks in the South and the southern state. They identified 7 structural racism indicators and showed that those indicators actually played a factor in causing blacks in the community to have increased BMI compared to women. Another study in the VHA system, showed that minorities, people who underwent total hip replacement, total knee replacement, they had lower improvement in their post-op range of motion scores than their white counterparts. Another study showed that despite using universal protocols, that there were differences in outcomes in racial and gender in intensive care unit for sepsis, ARDS, and cardiac arrest. So once again, another example where there's mandated or expected protocols for people to follow, but yet still in terms of the way blacks and minorities were treated, there were differences. So in summary, I want us all to remember when it comes to disparities that they're not natural. Disparities are indeed preventable. Disparities affect our overall health experience and outcomes. Disparities are systemic and structural. They're not just based upon what individuals are doing, but they're also based upon what systems and structures in our society are doing. And lastly, but most importantly, that if we work together, we can eliminate disparities in our system, in our healthcare system, and in our country. Thank you. Some resources for you. The National Association of County and City Health Officers, in addition to a lot of great YouTube videos updating you on what's going on in areas across the country, a lot of the educational resources on how to understand and combat healthcare disparities. The National Partnership for Action to End Healthcare Health Disparities also has great resources. The Henry J. Kaiser Family Foundation, a great resource for demographics, infographics on what's going on with rare diseases and healthcare issues in our society. The Commonwealth Fund, if you want to understand more about universal healthcare, and then Healthy People 2030, if you want to understand what are the government's expectations in combating health disparities. I would strongly recommend that you go to Healthy People 2030. This is Dr. Lutzum, member of the Alpha Phi Alpha Surgeon General Healthcare Disparities Committee. I hope this video was instructional and helpful to you. Thank you for your time.